Coming up today on Uncommon Sense, join us as we interview Kendra Tierney Norton, the founder and CEO of Catholic All Year of internet fame. Stay tuned. Hello, and welcome to Uncommon Sense, the official podcast of the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton. I am Grettelyn Darkey, your host, and happy to be joined by my co-host, Joe Grabowski. How are you today, Joe?
Very well, thank you.
Wonderful, and we are just so happy to be joined by Kendra Norton. Hi, how are you?
Hi, nice to be here.
Wonderful. Well, we are in the middle of our Advent series, but before we dive into that, I would love for you, if you don't mind, Kendra, to just introduce yourself a little for those of our listeners who don't really know you that well.
All right, that's kind of a big ask. All right, so my name is Kendra Tierney, and now Kendra Tierney Norton. I run Catholic All Year, and I was widowed 2 years ago and married this summer. So went from 10 kids to 14 kids.
Wow.
And yeah, I live in the Los Angeles area, and I really love liturgical living in the home and weird Catholic traditions and all that great stuff.
Excellent. Well, you're in the right place because we're going to talk about that kind of stuff today. Maybe not the 14 kids, although we can if you want to. I'm one of 9, so I get it a little bit. Cool. So let's just dive right in then. So again, we are in the middle of a series that we've been doing about Advent and approaching Christmas. We thought it'd be great to reach out to you and see if you would join us for Catholic traditions, because that's kind of your thing. Yes. So let's talk a little bit about Advent in the home. What should that look like?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing to focus on, because there are so many, there's so many traditions and there's so many options. But I think that the key to keep in mind is just that Advent needs to feel different than Christmas. And that for practicing Catholics, we can't get swept up in what the secular culture is doing. And it's okay if they're doing it entirely backwards. That does not, that doesn't mean that we have to do that as well. And so just that at the heart of Advent has to be this sense of longing and this sense of waiting and preparation. And it was something that, really took some getting used to, as we were trying to implement this stuff. But now my kids are on board, and we have this sort of running joke as we're driving around where they're shocked at, people already having Christmas decorations up. So it just has become part of our family culture, and, and something that certainly doesn't feel dour or limiting for us.
Wonderful. Well, Joe, do you have anything to add before I?
No, I just love that it's simple advice, hard maybe in the implementation and practice, and I think we can get into maybe some specific suggestions of ways to enhance that sense of expectation and waiting. But really, I would encourage just the viewers and listeners, that we maybe look at these things sometimes as burdens, and instead I think we should look at them as just special graces. Like there's a grace to the seasonality that the church has given in her liturgical year, and that God has given us in the creation of the world, that it's not all sameness. And so even in the passage of nature through a given year, you kind of get these little resonances with the path of man through life, approaching hopefully the next life. And so really to seize upon that opportunity and to recognize that, as with anything, there's to everything there is a season, and embracing that and doing things in due season and in their proper course, it enhances the joy, especially when you get to kind of pull that string and let loose a little bit after the period of expectancy and waiting.
Yeah, and that has definitely been our experience in our home, and and with a lot of kids, that it isn't a burden, and for us, it really allows us to appreciate some of the specific Advent traditions that the church gives us, and I think we'll talk about some of those specific things. But if back when we were in a rush to, put up Christmas decorations and start, and basically just do Christmas, in conjunction with Thanksgiving and straight through Advent, that it meant that we really sort of lost out on those beautiful Advent traditions and the Advent focus in the home. And by the time Christmas came, we were kind of tired of it all. And, so this way, being able to focus, being able to really live Advent allows us to then really be able to celebrate Christmas in a way that feels different.
No, I love that. So what are some of the traditions that you can implement in the home to help this season feel real?
Yeah, so there are a number of traditions, and I worry about listing them because there really are so many, and for somebody who's just and we at this point pretty much do all of them, but we didn't start out doing all of them. We started out with little baby steps and trying things and seeing what worked for our family in that particular season. But a few of them, there's the Advent wreath, and that's a tradition that started off as a liturgical living in the home tradition, was later adopted for use in churches as well. But there's a different prayer for each week and a different candle, and there's just a lot of symbolism. And so we wait to put our Christmas tree up until Christmas Eve, which is pretty hardcore, old school. But like, if you read old Christmas books, they all talk about that you put your Christmas tree up on Christmas Eve, and usually at noon, like after noon on Christmas Eve, if you really want to. If you read the old liturgical living in the home books, and even just old, fiction books about preparation for Christmas. So we do that. But the Advent wreath, if we use actual greenery and, and in an actual wreath shape, some of them get really beautiful and really, edgy, and they lose some of that symbolism. Yeah. So the symbolism is supposed to have, evergreen branches in a circle, so that we can remember sort of the eternal nature of God, and that in the evergreen branches, you can look for pine cones and seed pods and things that remind us of that birth and the incarnation of Christ. And then of course the 4 candles that symbolize that that are for the 4 weeks of Advent, but also symbolize the 4,000 years-ish, sort of as it's reckoned in the Old Testament, between Adam and Eve and the birth of Jesus. But that's something that it's got so many so much sensory draw for it, that you've got candles and you've got the greenery, so you have smells and you have sights. And I'm a big fan of not fake greenery and not fake candles, that like, let's use this as an opportunity to teach kids a little bit about how to light candles and fire safety and not just give in and have a little battery operated thing. That's just me. That is not an official teaching of church as far as inside your home goes, but it does. There is specific guidance that in churches that we're not supposed to have battery. We're not supposed to have electric candles. We're not supposed to have fake flowers, and because they're not appropriate for liturgical, for religious use. And so I like to bring that home along with my other liturgical living in the home traditions, and just go wild with the real stuff.
I love it, though. I think kids respond to that so much too. I mean, my kids certainly love the fire. Like, that's they're always fighting to who gets to blow out the candles at the end of the dinner. Yeah, but absolutely. Yeah, but I think even, the real greenery, that's something you could bring them into as well. If you have any around your house, you could, they could help to gather it or whatever. Like
Yeah.
there's sort of elements there that bring them in naturally.
Yeah, and that's something that I really noticed reading these sort of old school liturgical living in the home books. And there's one by Mary Reed Newland called The Year in Our Children. There's one by Maria von Trapp of the Sound of Music fame, and there is their traditions and decorating is all very homemade and all very sort of paper and nature based. And I think that sort of focus keeps us from having giant tubs of things that we have to store every year. And it makes the decorations a little bit different every year and a little bit wonky. And it means that we come together as a family to make them. So I think a great Advent calendar is to just go outside and cut some evergreen branches and look for a pine cone, and make that into a circle, and you just spray it with a spray bottle, and that tends to keep it okay. But you can also just replace things as needed. And I like to just use the jar candles, make less mess than taper candles, that are easy to find and replace. You can. Different countries actually have, I believe German tradition is to have red candles. The tradition that you usually see in the U.S. is to have the purple candles and one pink candle. But yeah, the jar candles instead of tapers makes less mess.
Always important when you've got kids flying around.
But then another one, so other traditions include the Jesse tree, which is, tracing of salvation history through Old Testament and New Testament, symbols and characters that help us sort of seat the incarnation in Jewish and early Jewish and Christian tradition. We can talk about that one, but then there's also the Christmas anticipation prayer. There's Advent calendars. There's when you're going to shop for Christmas presents. There's
that was an interesting one. I'd love to stop on that because I was looking through the chapters of your book that you sent us, and it was interesting to me that you said you shop for before Advent. I think that's a very interesting idea.
Yeah. And again, it's that same concept of of wanting this season to feel like preparation. And if for you that is gift shopping, that's fine. But especially when it involves kids, it's easy for their sort of little hearts and minds to get swept up in the wanting things. Mm-hmm. So we write out our Christmas lists, and we usually do that about now. And we usually do that before Advent starts, and then they leave their Christmas lists for St. Nicholas on St. Nicholas Day when they put their shoes out for that. And then it doesn't do any good to talk about what they want anymore after that, because their list, their letter is already gone, and what's done is done. And so it really allows them to focus on these little family projects that we're doing, on Christmas baking that we're doing to save up, and decorations that we're making, and things like that, rather than what you want for Christmas, what you want, because that's done. That part's over, and it's over for them, but it's also over for me, because I'm able to be a little bit more methodical about it if I start earlier, and then I just try to be done with it and not think about that part of it anymore.
That's nice. Joe, do you have anything to add?
Well, I love the conversation. I think kind of the through line of all this, or why we're having this conversation. Let's back up to that. Those that have been following along with the series know that we're trying to help people have a more meaningful and a more full, rich experience of this season. But as we mentioned in one of the previous episodes with Father Howe, liturgy, all this stuff, what we do in the home, it is a kind of theater. It's a theatrical sort of engagement. There's this great phrase, and I've been trying to find the original language for it. It's from the Directory of Popular Piety, put together by the Congregation for the Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments before it became a dicastery, from the Magisterium. And there's this one phrase in there describing the season of Advent, and it's a hyphenated phrase that says waiting memory. It's a season of waiting memory. Mm. And I thought that it's such a neat encapsulation of what it is that we're doing, because, as we've said previously on an episode here, Christ has been born, right? The historical event is once and for all time, and it's been achieved and it's accomplished. But why do we enter into this? It's so that we can commiserate with the people of Israel and their expectation and their longing for this Messiah, and feel that same longing ourselves, and not just take it for granted, but feel it the way Chesterton encourages us to do, as something that might not have been. It is a gift that we have received, and that's really important. So however we do these things, whatever rituals or traditions we adopt, I think just having that deliberate and purposeful attitude of making it mean something and not missing the opportunity that God has presented us. It's a rich opportunity to be able to kind of enact in our own lives that long expectation, that long period of waiting. Now, as this episode airs, it's the beginning today of the O antiphons, and just those exclamations of hope and expectation of what the Messiah will be. These ecstatic utterances that we make for the next 8 days as we approach Christmas. It's all important, and so I just really encourage those that are viewing and listening not to just let this be background noise the way that so many podcasts can be, but to really be looking for ideas and investigating and inventorying. We're halfway through Advent now for you, but what can you do differently? What can you do to make the most of the next octave of approach to this great feast?
Yeah, and I think it's so good to be thinking about about the Jewish people and how long they were waiting for the Messiah. I think also as a mom, I like to think about that period of waiting for the birth of a child. And I think a lot of people think, oh, what does it matter if we just start celebrating now? Because, it's such an important thing to celebrate that, why not have more of that? But then I think about, the actual, you can't rush the celebration of the birth of a child. There is this time of preparation. And that's why, sometimes Advent in our home can feel really busy. And that I hear from people who say, well, don't we want this like really quiet, prayerful Advent? Like, sure, if you can have a quiet, prayerful Advent, great, go for it. But what I remember about, that time of waiting before a baby is born is busy. It's preparing. It's making sure that, that we're ready with everything we need so that we can celebrate and that we can then relax and sort of, snuggle in with that new baby. So I feel like our Advent traditions are sort of more active and more, and again, more focused on preparation and doing. And then our Christmas traditions are a lot more relaxed, and they're a lot more, focused on spending that time, that joyful and celebratory time together as a family, and and celebrating with our loved ones as well. But to focus on it as that actual historical event, I think is really good. And that yes, it happened for all time, but we remember it again every year. And I think that we can do it in a really real way if we remember what the Holy Family was doing at this time.
I love that because, even if you haven't had a child, if you don't have that experience, most of us have welcomed a guest into our house at some point, right? And the preparation for that is just busy, busy, busy. And hopefully, when they come, you're not busy, busy. You're spending time with them. So it's a similar sort of feeling, and I love that. That's wonderful.
I think maybe the only time I mention Chesterton in my book, in the Catholic All Year Compendium, is in my defense of Santa Claus and how which is always a big topic of contention on the internet this time of year. But I don't know. Are you guys on Chesterton's side on Santa Claus?
Of course. How could we not do it?
Yeah, we did do a special episode on Santa Claus specifically, which was really fun, and we did dive into that controversy just a little bit. But it is a funny thing that yeah. So how do you guys handle Santa Claus?
Yeah, it is something that has sort of caught me off guard, being a professional Catholic, is how different how differently people see it. And you hear people say like, oh, well, I'm just not going to lie to my children. I'm like, okay, but do you ever play dress up with them? Do you ever pretend you can't find them when you're playing hide and seek? Because I'm pretty good at hide and seek and I can find them, but I act like I can't. But yeah, so we view the Santa Claus story as something that is that reflects a greater truth, and that is a just fun cultural tradition that has deep Catholic roots. So my kids, we celebrate St. Nicholas Day. We haven't been to visit Santa at the mall in a very long time, but back when we used to do that, when my oldest kids were little, I was like, all right, we'll go on St. Nicholas Day, because that'll be a good, I'm always looking for ways to make things that we were going to do anyway, or, more secular traditions. I'm always looking for ways to sort of tie them to the liturgical year. But that ended up being kind of confusing to my kids, because Santa at the mall definitely did not know that it was his feast day when they were congratulating him on it. But we tell them this is one of Santa's helpers. He can get a message to Santa. But I just love the idea that it allows us to give in secret the same way that St. Nicholas did. It allows us to, let Santa be the hero, and and sort of be in the background a little bit, which I think is a good thing. And something, now that we have older kids and little kids in the house, it's a really fun thing in our home for and sort of a rite of passage when kids go from team little kid to team grown-ups and big kids, as far as holiday preparation. And so that transition has been not painful for my children, and no one has ever indicated that they thought that was problematic in our house. And it's fun for them to get to be on the other side in the preparation side, and helping to create those memories for their little siblings.
That's great. I do remember, I'm on the older end of my family, and I have memories like that, we literally one year, my brother we go out on the roof a lot. I don't know. I've talked about this before in episodes, but there's a big roof over the porch, and no one fell through it, but one of my brothers went out there and stomped around one time to try to keep the Santa thing alive, and it was fun.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then and I think that kids ask a lot of questions, obviously, and the way that I like to handle it is to say that I don't know, but maybe it could be this, maybe it could be this, and not say oh, this this one, and especially because all of the kids' Christmas claymation movies and various books and stuff, they don't really get the Catholic traditions of St. Nicholas correct. So we can say oh, probably it's not quite like this because we know this. And so then it's just this sort of, it's just a working model of like, how do we think that he could get around the earth? How could he make all of these toys? Like, why elves? And then we just have a conversation about it, and they don't know, and I don't know, and we just try to figure it out. And that works in our house.
I like that.
I remember hearing a story once, and I can't remember where I heard it, but somebody was describing when their child, found out the big secret, and mom says something to the effect, well, yeah, it is, it's dad puts the presents under the tree, and the kid, his response, he got really wide-eyed and said, Dad works for Santa? So
yes. We do.
Like, well, you're not wrong. Yeah.
It's great.
I love that. Well, in this kind of vein, and since we're getting close to Christmas, what are some good like Christmas traditions that people can sort of do after all the busyness and the preparation of Advent?
Well, and I will say that, in the spirit of it's never too late to start a good thing, that really our favorite liturgical living tradition of the whole year is the Christmas novena, not to be confused with the Christmas anticipation prayer that starts on St. Andrew's feast day, but an actual 9 days before Christmas novena, which would be totally fine for people to pick up a little bit late. But I think that we focus on that, and in all the busyness of Advent, and people having Christmas parties, even though it's Advent, but we really focus in our family on taking that maybe half an hour to come together, and we sit down in the living room around a fire, and we do it's an Old Testament reading and a New Testament reading and prayers from the Liturgy of the Hours. The one that we used was composed by an Italian priest in 17 something. And I just love thinking about how many families have sat down together and prayed these exact same words that we have in order to prepare. Because we're also, during Advent, we try to avoid Christmas treats and things like that so that we're feeling like we're waiting a little bit. But then it starts getting relaxed a little during the Christmas novena, and we'll, eat things that people have given us as gifts and things. But to really make these last few days of Advent count, whether or not you've been trying to observe Advent in the home before that. But it was a surprise to me when my kids started telling that my kids get asked, what are your favorite liturgical year celebrations? And we do a lot of, treat heavy, crazy, fun things during the year. We do a devil piñata for Michaelmas. They get to hit with a sword. We do, we clear out all the treats in our house on Fat Tuesday by making these ridiculous, we call boeuf gras Sundays, like fatted calf Sundays. And lots of other crazy stuff like that. But my kids really love the Christmas novena, and having that to come back to again every year. So we really love that. And if it's the if you're looking to start up something, you can find that online. You can find it on my website. But it's available other places too. And yeah, so I would really recommend that. But then yeah, there are great traditions specifically for Christmas that again sort of help mark that as its own season. One that I really like is that we have our nativity set up, and we try to add to it during Advent. So we'll start with just the sable, we'll add the animals, and over the course of Advent, not necessarily on one particular day or another, but we'll add things. But the wise men are off sort of on the other side of the mantle away, and during the day the 12 days of Christmas between Christmas and Epiphany, the wise men move through the house every night and are in a different place, and then the kids can look for them. And then on Epiphany, they arrive at the Nativity. So that's a fun one that sort of marks the 12 days of Christmas for us.
I love that. I love that a lot. There's actually a church that I went to, and they would start them outside, which was really fun. And they would sort of work. They were big, big.
Yeah.
They would work their way into the church, and it's neat. Again, it's a great way it's a nice way to bring the kids into it. It's kind of like mysterious and fun, and yeah, I love that one.
I think it's great. And then, and another thing that I have to pause movies and say, well, the wise men wouldn't have been there on the night that Jesus was born, but I guess it's fine. And my kids are like, Mom, just start the movie. So that's fun. And then during those 12 days of Christmas too, since we have been waiting on Christmas entertainment, there are different carols in Catholic tradition that are associated with Advent and then are associated with Christmas. So we have separate playlists, and we play Advent music during Advent, and then once it's Christmas, we switch to the Christmas playlist instead. We do that, and we watch a different Christmas movie with the whole family every night of the 12 nights of Christmas. And we eat all our Christmas treats that we've been saving up, and so we try to do some of those things.
Yeah, I love that. We're pretty strict about the music in our house too. We started doing that a couple years ago, and it's just been so fruitful, because the Advent music. And I've been a professional singer for like 15 years, so I have a great wealth of Advent carols in my head that I can pull on, and they're beautiful, but they are kind of like sparse, like. I don't know. And then you get into the Christmas stuff and the Messiah, and all these beautiful trumpets and everything. And it's just a different feeling. And I think it can help to color the seasons, especially if it's hard to have a quiet Advent in your house. You just need a little something, No,
I think that's such a good point, is that if you're trying to cultivate this feeling, right, mm-hmm. this feeling of waiting, that having that soundtrack of waiting instead of the soundtrack of celebrating it's already here, yes. I think that it really does make a difference, and that's what we put on, and so my playlists are sort of a wacky mix of actual Catholic hymns, and then like I have gone through secular Christmas songs and decided which ones are Advent and which ones are. So I'll Be Home for Christmas, we'll listen to that one during Advent because that's a before Christmas song. And,
I love that. That's great.
But yeah, so then making the switch to the Christmas songs, it really does change the feel, of our of the things that we're doing with that on in the background.
Mm-hmm. And it's like you said, Joe, there is a bit of theater involved. So, having your correct soundtracks for your proper seasons really makes a difference. It really does. Yeah.
And our playlists are on Spotify. If anybody is interested, you can just search for Catholic All Year, and
nice.
they're available.
I'll try that. That'll be fun.
You share my weird taste in music.
Yeah, I think, again, it's whatever is done. What I love about this is just the intentionality of it. And I think it's almost sort of like whatever you do, doing something with that deliberateness and intentionality and care is not only, first of all, what our Lord desires most from us, right? We don't want to just go rotely through motions. But I think also you'll see the fruit of it. This is a particular thing I'd go back to often, and I think I've mentioned it before, but for all the talk that there is of full active and conscious participation in the actual liturgy, I think one of the neglected things of that is what happens outside the liturgy that relates to the liturgy. In other words, what happens in the liturgy of the home, what happens in the domestic church, how we're preparing ourselves and orienting our day-to-day lives around that, so that then when we show up in the communal worship at the Mass, whether it's daily or just on the weekend, we're all the more prepared in that way. And so it's just you'll be surprised, I think, by the fruits that this kind of approach can bear in your life if you give it a chance.
Yeah, and that's something that was really important for me, I think, as a young mom. And we at the beginning, now I've got kids everywhere. I've got kids in college, I've got kids at a brick and mortar school, I've got kids in homeschool, but as a young mom with all little kids, and we spent so much time in the home, and that sort of the domestic church part of that is I think so it really is important for the faith life of the family, but particularly I think mom and kids who might be spending the vast majority of their time in the home, and to have that the look of the home, the decorations of the home reflect the proper season, and to have that be something that we work on together, it was really meaningful, and it can it's not obvious that it would, but for me, to have that those especially homemade decorations, just things like little snowflakes that the kids cut out of paper, and making slightly wonky evergreen wreath to hang on the front door instead of buying a perfect plastic one off your local big box store. But those things that we have our own hands in creating. And then especially for us, and everybody listening to this has probably already made their decision this year, but waiting on the Christmas tree was really the when I finally mustered the courage to wait on that, to have it go from adding things here and there, a little preparation, and then on Christmas Eve to have the Christmas tree there, to be able to turn on the lights and have the ornaments on there, and have that be the thing we do on Christmas Eve, is to put up, hang our stockings and put the Christmas tree up. That it really captures the hearts and minds of the people in the home.
No, I love that. I don't know. I don't know if I'd have the courage. We tend to get pretty picked over in the Christmas tree world where I live. We've had a blight the last couple of years, but I don't know. I think I'm going to try to convince my husband one year to do this, because it does sound so cool. And I'm German. That tradition is kind of in my blood anyway, and I without a whole lot, I understand why that would be so cool, especially for the kids. But yeah.
Well, and I had a liturgical living crisis of conscience over it once we moved some of the kids to this brick and mortar school, and they have a Christmas tree fundraiser. And I was like, oh no, like, do we buy the Christmas tree from the school or not? But it comes so early. And my husband was like, well, I'll just put it in a bucket on the side of the house. Okay, great.
There you go.
So our Christmas tree lives on the side of the house, all, in a bucket of water, but still wrapped up in its little cocoon.
That's smart. That'll
but
do.
But before that, we would actually go out to a, chop your own Christmas tree place, and they were very picked over, and we would, decide which one with the hole in it we wanted. And actually we kind of had this sort of running family joke of that, that we were always going to end up with the wonky Christmas tree.
As long as you can accept it, that's no big deal. Well, this has been super fun. Any last thoughts before we sign off here, Kendra?
Yeah, I think that that such a big part of raising kids in the faith is having traditions like this that help us find our identity in our Catholic faith, having these things that we come back to again and again every year, having it be part of our family culture. And I think that, those of us who are parents, you hear so many stories of kids not staying Catholic, and just, that these implementing these liturgical living in the home traditions, came in our family through, doing this research into, what does being Catholic, really look like. And just anecdotally in my, observation of the families that we know, and we are fortunate enough to live in a community with, really great Catholic, a great Catholic community, and just seeing these families where their kids have stayed Catholic, where their kids have, where they, the one family branches into all of these, kids and grandkids, and it's such a beautiful thing. And the thing that I, have just noticed as a young mom, as I'm, trying to figure out how I wanted to raise my kids, is that it was these families that had these traditions that sort of help bind you together, and bind you to the faith. And in a related way, weren't scared of the more secular traditions that are also associated, that we're able to find the beauty in the good things that are part of secular holiday traditions, and not see them, and not see those things as a threat to our faith, to have things be a conversation, and somehow walking that line is something, is sort of a unifying characteristic that I've seen in some of the families that I really admire. And so that's my goal for our liturgical living in the home. That's my goal for our Advent and Christmas, and it's my goal for general child rearing.
Wonderful. Well, that's helpful. I mean, I feel like we're all trying to figure it out as we go. There's no definitive handbook, although your book is very good. Where can people find you and your work and everything?
Yeah, so the website is Catholic All Year. I'm on social media, and then the book, there's the Catholic All Year Compendium, which sort of talks about these Catholic traditions for feast days and seasons throughout the year. And then I also have the Catholic All Year Prayer Companion, which can be used with the compendium or without it, but it contains the text of things like the Christmas novena, prayers, and scripture readings, and various texts that are associated with those same feast days and seasons, so that you're not having to be on your phone all the time looking for the version you thought you remembered of that one particular prayer. So yeah, my hope with both of those books is just to make living the faith in the home manageable for busy modern families.
Wonderful. We need that. Thank you. Well, thank you again so much for talking to us. This has been really great. Thank you.
Yeah, so fun. I keep doing what you guys are doing. It's great.
Same.
Thank you.
Same. And Joe, as always, thank you. Any last thoughts from you, sir?
No, just it's not too late. If you're tuning in, no matter what, maybe it's after Christmas when you're finally catching up with this episode. It's not too late to be deliberate about your approach to what God has in store for you today. So, yeah.
Wonderful, beautiful.
Amen.
Yeah, let's end there. Well, thank you again about both of you, and thank you all of our listeners and people watching on YouTube. We really appreciate you. We love to hear from you. If you have any comments, thoughts, any traditions that you like to do in your home that we didn't talk about, feel free to share them in our comments. Check out all the links in the description for ways to get more into what Kendra is doing. And share this episode, hit subscribe, hit the bell, It's also not too late to sign up for our Advent and Christmas reflections. You can go to chesterton.org to do that. We have them all the way through Epiphany. Is that right, Joe? I think they're all the way through Epiphany. So you can still get them in your inbox every day. Quote from Chesterton, some beautiful artwork, help you reflect and enter the season. Share it all with your friends, because as we know, Chesterton is always better with friends. Thank you, and God bless.